Welcome, everyone, to the online service for NorthStar community, and of course for you that are here in person as well. So excited to be here, and it's such an exciting time to be able to work in the lives of people who are struggling with recovery and trying to make it. And it's such a tough but worthwhile journey to be doing this. And you know, and we look at our recovery in the forms of all sorts of things. We don't certainly just narrow this down to substances. But when we talk about addiction, we talk about people who are addicted to substances, and I'll even find a chance to say alcohol as well. Compulsive behaviors, those things we just cannot help ourselves. We just have to keep doing them. And then, of course, when we try to make people into something, either that we can have them help us feel better about ourselves, or we think we can save other people. And neither one of those don't work very well. So we're here at NorthStar Community to help us overcome those things. And you know, I always make sure, again, when we think about addiction, we oftentimes think about substances, but I can think of story after story of where people have ruined their lives because of compulsive behaviors or because of I could even call it compulsive relationships. And a lot of times, of course, what we do is we put those all together and we do all three of those is what we do a lot of times. And the point is for us is that we see addiction, again, as habitual behavior to avoid pain. And if you think about it, how hard is it for us to tell you or tell myself that I need to trust the process, I need to trust other people, I need to trust myself, and I need to trust God to recover. That all sounds good, but the fact is, for most of us, we've lived lives where trusting hasn't always gone well for us, either in our childhoods or maybe in our early adulthood, whatever it is. We had a lot of trauma in our lives, people that we should have been able to trust, we couldn't, including ourselves. And, you know, I always think about Paul in Romans 7 when he writes about how he just can't quit doing it. He can't quit doing things he hates doing. And I think we all relate to that. That's what addiction does to us. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to avoid the pain in our lives. And what we have to start embracing, and we talk about this all the time in NorthStar, if you want to recover, you have to embrace pain. You have to see pain as an ally. And certainly none of us, I don't recommend any of us going out there and creating pain. But the fact is, if you're online today, or if you're sitting here with me, I'm going to assume you're in recovery. And that means that you've had a lot of pain in your life, or you're going through pain right now. So it's like tell people, you're not doing cartwheels now. So you might as well look at this as a way to embrace the pain in our lives, find ways to overcome it, so we can move on to have that rich, full, meaningful life. So today, the subject is dealing with trust. And I put underneath that, I put trust, connection, brutal honesty, and gratitude. That's how you recover. And doesn't that sound like fun? But we do. We have to, trust is so paramount to our recovery. And think about that. So I'm someone who's addicted. I'm making bad decisions. I continue to make bad decisions in whatever those three categories or several of those categories. I keep harming myself. I'm harming others around me, people I love. I ask myself, when can I stop doing these things? And I just keep doing them. So I have an after-school program. I had one of the little guys in there. He's 6 years old, and he was talking to himself. I'll change his name, but so I was getting on about something he'd done wrong, and he goes, you know, every morning I get up and I say, Jimmy, we're going to be good today. We're going to do what we're supposed to, and I just can't do it. I went, what a perfect analogy or statement about us in addiction. How many times have you said to yourself, I'm done, I'm not going to do this again, I'm over it, I'm tired of hurting people, I'm tired of hurting myself, I'm sick of losing jobs, I'm sick of being tired. As we like to say, I'm sick of being sick and tired. And then we go out and do it again. That's what addiction does. And so what we're trying to do here in this series we've been working on is looking at addictive thinking. And a lot of this, of course, I've been using Dr. Tversky's book, Addictive Thinking, an original title there. But the fact is, addictive thinking, its job is to keep us addicted. That's what it does. It wants us to stay addicted because it's more painful for us to deal with what's happened in our lives, to deal with the things we're doing wrong now, the shame, the mistrust, all those things we feel, than it is to be sober and face those things. So the problem is when we talk about trust, which is huge for recovery, you kind of got to put it all together, right? So we talk about morbid thinking. Well, if you have morbid thinking, if that rules your life, it's going to be a little hard to trust people, a little hard to trust processes, a little hard to trust the right organizations. If I believe that it's easier to live addicted than it is to not live addicted, I'm not going to make good decisions. That's going to wreck trust. So trusting people is really hard, particularly when we're addicted. And one of the problems, what we do when we're addicted is we join tribes, either in person or online or however we do it. We go out and we find people who are messed up like we are, so they'll tell us that we're not messed up, and they'll help us continue to be messed up. And the last thing that tribesmen want is for us to get healthy. Well, and also, I hate to tell, but you're part of the tribe if you're doing that. And you can say to me, everybody I've ever trusted has harmed me. No one that I should be able to count on, all they've done is harm me. Or people that shouldn't have harm me. All those things. The fact is, people are going to harm you. It's part of life, just as you're going to harm people. But that's not a way to live, because there's also people out there aren't going to harm you, and they're going to do more good than harm. But when you're in a tribe, you're going to be a tribesman, and you're going to think it's normal to use. You're going to think it's normal to act out. You're going to live with resentment. You're going to live with bitterness. And you're going to go back to the tribe, and they're going to reinforce all that you do. And one of the things that tribesmen really like to do is in a tribe is we really want us to embrace self-hatred. We loathe ourselves, and when we get into the tribe, we all loathe ourselves. It's hard to get out of there. In the AA, they have the great saying about you have to change people, places, and definitely you got to change people when you're going to do it. But here's the other part of addictive thinking that's really hard, we don't want to hear about, and that is the prolonging the inevitable. That's what we don't want to hear. The only way I'm going to recover, if we go down the premise that pain is what we need to recover, then guess what? We need to have a lot of pain to recover. And as all of you know out there listening, some of us have very, very hard heads, and we have really long ways to fall before we change. Every time, if you are a family member or a friend of someone that you love who's addicted, every time you intervene, every time you try to put a pillow down for them to land on, every time you try to get the court system to show leniency, every time that you work so hard to ignore the bad things they're doing around you, or every time that you're okay with people making bad decisions because of their addiction, you're prolonging the inevitable. If you talk to anybody who's been in recovery, and I say successfully, we don't have graduates, so don't make sure you hear that. But for people who have been able to stay clean and they've overcome a lot of their addiction, they will tell you that the worst thing that would happen to them was when people would try to bail them out. It's so hard to hear. It's hard to watch loved ones who are failing and harming themselves, harming their children, all the stuff, you know the list. But until we stop helping them, we are prolonging the inevitable. No one just kind of naturally drifts over to recovery. Nobody just kind of says, I've had people say, I'm tired of this, but that's back to the law of human gravity. It's just more painful. And the other thing is, again, I always say this, and again, I apologize to any of you who have been harmed by church people. We can be mean. A lot of times we're well-meaning, but we can be mean. And that's not God. And there's so many people in the Christian church who embrace you and love you and forgive you, and because they know themselves they got hurts, habits, and hang-ups. But don't judge God by man. God loves you, and he forgives us. So I'm going to read Psalms 51 to you. This is David, and obviously he's in big trouble again here. So this is David is talking, he's praying to God and talking about God, and this is right after he got in trouble for Bathsheba. So, generous in love, God give grace. Huge in mercy, wipe out my bad record. Scrub away my guilt, soak out my sins in your laundry. I know how bad I've been. My sins are staring me down. You're the one I violated, and you've seen it all, seen the full extent of my evil. You have all the facts before you. Whatever you decide about me is fair. I've been out of step with you for a long time, in the wrong since before I was born. What you're after is truth from the inside out. Enter me then, conceive a new, true life. And that's what God does for us. All you got to do is let him. It's that simple. That's all you got to do. God loves you. So, even that's a big statement, because trust for addicts, it's hard for us. We can't do it. It's so hard to do that. Past trauma creates so much mistrust and shame. I mean, you put shame and hurt together, you get mistrust. And guess what? You got to have trust to recover. I will continue to say this, and I know of no one who has recovered by themselves. I know some people who think they have, and I know some people who have quit using, but they're still really miserable because they didn't deal with the pain in their lives. For many of us, we have past trauma that has just wreaked havoc in our life. And so much of what we're after here is for us to become aware of that. We were sitting in NorthStar the other day, and I think we had 20-some there, and I went around a room and counted, and I think about 70% of us sitting in the room had scored 6 or more on the adverse childhood experiences. That's huge. It also is not a coincidence, because so many people who got into addiction started and become because of all the hurt and harm that happened to them as children. So the point is, again, don't care about your childhood. I just care about how your childhood affects you today. And that's what we need to continue to see, is how what we do, so much of our life is determined by what happened to us as children. And so what we have to do is we have to find ways to trust the right people. We need to find ways to remove the toxic people from our lives, because the toxicity is only going to keep us from recovering. And what we have to realize when I say this, a lot of times we're toxic to other people as well. So it isn't like we're saying this in a judgmental way. But the fact is, if we're amongst toxic people, we're not going to recover. We need to find the right professionals. We need to find the right support groups. We need the trust, and that is huge, and it's a lot to ask. Think about pre-step 1, where you were then. And I like this quote here, what Tversky says. He goes, first, we are asking this person to completely and permanently abstain from using, surviving, behaving in ways that has made life livable. Maybe the only thing that has made it tolerable is what we are doing, using, abusing, all those things. So we understand what we're asking here is very difficult. To trust a process, to trust a system, to trust people, yeah, don't think so. So the law of human gravity will kick in and tell us, nah, we don't need to do that. In fact, sometimes it doesn't even faze us. So if I say again to you, you're going to lose your family, you're going to lose your health, you're going to lose your job, you're going to lose everything if you don't stop, and we go, you're right, I'm going to stop. It's hard. The law of human gravity, for us that have gone through hurts, habits, and hang-ups, we understand the law of human gravity. It's easier to live using than to live sober and face our pain. So this requires a lot of trust. And I hate to tell it to us, but we have to stop. But what we have to understand is abstinence is a formidable challenge. And abstinence is not recovery. It's just the beginning of recovery, and it's required for us to recover. So really, recovery requires a change in attitude and behavior, which is so hard to do. And think about if I have spent from age 12 to present avoiding pain, creating strategies, finding substances, finding people to keep me from recovering, this is a pretty heavy thing to ask. But we have to figure out a way. And it gets back to the important, particularly for you young people out there, we just need you to stop today. Don't worry about anything else. Maybe 30 days would be really good for you, but that's another subject. So I was thinking, of all the conversations we've had, I just think Tversky's analogy of gravity is such a good one. So I'm sitting here, and we'll use our phones because we all adore these things, right? We'd all be really sad if they went away. So I grab your phone. We're up on the 5th story of a building. I open the window, and I go, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take your phone. I'm going to put it out here, and I'm going to let go of it, and it's just going to float there. There's no such thing as gravity. Don't worry about it. Gravity's just made up. It's not true. Here you go. I'm just going to let your phone sit here, and it's not going to fall 5 stories and break. And what would you be doing? You'd be like, don't let go of the phone. There is such thing as gravity. Don't stop. But when we're in our addictive thinking, we think the same kind of stuff, right? How many times do we say to ourselves, I can quit anytime I want? That is as big a lie as me saying this phone's not going to drop. Or how many times do we say, well, I know I get on Facebook a little bit. Not that much. I mean, it was 4 hours. And I really care about all those likes. But hey, that phone's not going to drop, is it? It's going to float right there. Or how about, oh yeah, these family members, they've hurt you your entire life. They're never going to be healthy. They're never going to be there for you. But I'm going to keep living there waiting on them to love me. I got the phone right outside the 5th story window again. Do you hear how we think? So, but as addicted, we just can't hear those things because we're trying to protect our pain. I want to believe that as a child, my parents were good parents, when the fact is a lot of us, our parents weren't very good parents because they were having their issues and their issues before them. It's ongoing. I'm not blaming them for you. You're an adult now, but it sure is good to become aware of all this so you can do something about it. The relief I've seen on people's faces after they take the ACE and they score big, and which isn't what we want. You don't want to score high on the ACE, but it's relief to know they're not alone. It's relief to know that now this explains things. Awareness is so important. It's part of trusting, right? So I love the other analogy that Tversky uses. He goes, all right, so you're addicted and you're still going to hang in there and tell me that your mother's not toxic to you and not causing problems in your life, and that drinking a 6-pack, which really means a 12-pack every night, not a problem, and buying from Amazon every day, not a problem. So again, you buy that, you believe that, and so you have people around you saying, you got to stop. You got to quit. You got to quit doing these things because it's harming you. And you're like, okay, sure, I'll do that. So then you go to the dentist, and the dentist says to you, you need to have a tooth pulled. What do? You go, well, darn, but let's get it done. So you'll believe that. If a doctor tells you that you need to do something to fix something in you physically, you go, okay, don't like it, but let's do it. So we say to you, you got to stop doing these things. You got to stop living addictively. And we go, I don't know about that one. You see how distorted we get in our thinking? Addictive thinking is just so powerful, right? Well, because we're asking you to change your concept of reality. So I want you to think about that gravity thing again. It is absurd. It is absurd for you to believe that you can recover and still do all the things you're doing now and ignore your pain as it is to me to put your phone out in the air and it not fall to the ground. It's the exact same thing. It's just as absurd. But that's what we do with addictive thinking. I mean, think about in your lives when you were caught up in addictive thinking at the lowest point, some of the things you did that made sense at the time, that you look back now and go, what in the world was I doing? That's all I got to say. So here's the point. You got to have rock bottom experience. You got to flip the law of human gravity. You're not going to change until the pain hits you. And then, only then, probably can you start trusting people because your pain's too high. Hiding. I always talk about how you want to grow addiction, go downstairs, hide in your basement, and stay away from everybody, and you will grow your addiction, just like a mushroom. But think about it. So you come in, you go, okay, I'm in a lot of pain now. I'm starting to realize that all this stuff I've put my faith in is not working. In fact, it's harming me. I'm getting it. I'm starting to get it. So I go to a therapist or a professional or a support group, and they say, we got a way for you to fix this. And you go, no way. I can't trust anyone. In fact, I can come to you and say, you know what? I come up, shake your hand. I'm going to say, we're here to help you. We're here to try to help you. And you're going to go, you don't understand me. I'm unique. I'm different. I'm so different from other addicts. I'm not like that. And you go, yeah, you're actually just like all the other addicts. I always tell people, like a new family will come in, I'll be talking to them. I say, let me guess. Here's some things you've heard. Here's some things you've seen. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're so smart. And I go, no, I'm not. That's what addicts do. Addiction is fairly consistent when you really think about it because it takes over and we become very survival oriented. We become very difficult, but it's because of all the same things. So think about it. Someone comes to you and says, I need you to change. You got to stop doing these things. And I'm here to help. Not easy to hear when you've been addicted your entire life or most of your life and people around you have harmed you, hurt you. People who should have been kind to you have not been. You have harmed others. You feel shame for what you've done. You feel shame for what's been done to you. I always think it's amazing when we talk about the adverse childhood experiences again. This was done to you as a child, right? You were a child. And the shame we feel for the things that was done to us is so damaging. And that's what I hope we get as we continue to become aware of these things, that we can start letting go of that. You were 6 years old. Oh, you know, one of the things we always forget. So let's say that you're someone out there that was sexually abused by an adult when you're 7 years old. The number of people will say to me, well, I should have said no. I should have stopped them. I'm like, they were this much taller than you. They were powerful, physical people, and they probably were people you should have been able to trust, since 90% of the time, sexual abuse is done by someone we know. Do you hear how unreasonable and judgmental that is to say that? The fact is you're a victim, and you should not be feeling shame about it. Maybe anger, resentment, things like that, but shame is not the right one, but that's what we do. We all run the shame. So I say this all the time, but I do it for a reason. So on the adverse childhood experiences, again, if you've never seen it, go online. It's easy to find. If you score a 6 or more, you're going to die 20 years younger than someone who scores a 0 on the ACE without intervention. I don't know what else to say to you to get you to understand how important recovery is. Why do we die younger? We're reckless. We live with resentment and bitterness. We go out and do crazy things. We drink too much. We use too much. We harm others. We get in fights. I drive too fast. Those are things we do. That's why we die 20 years younger on average without intervention, because we hate ourselves. We loathe ourselves. And now I'm asking you to go trust other people. You get the point. This is hard to do. Now, I do like absolutely one day at a time, so make sure you hear that. It is to me, one day at a time. There's 3 big ones for me. One day at a time is the most important. We are sick as our secrets, right behind it in importance. And then I think the other is prolonging the inevitable. Those are the 3 biggies for me. But so what I'm going to say to you here is, I'm not ignoring one day at a time. I'm just saying, a lot of you, if you can't, just try this. Try not to do what you're doing for 30 days. Just see if you can do it. Now, if you're big in alcohol, go get detoxed. But if you're on Facebook 4 hours a day, just try for 30 days to not be on it. You know, like these things right here, they're the most wonderful, awesome technology ever. Who would have dreamt? I'm in my 60s, so who would have dreamt, right? The things this thing does. Our depression levels have kicked up by 50% since 1990 in our country. It is not a coincidence. I'm not saying quit using these. I'm just saying that we are so caught up in these. Our dopamine levels are getting messed up, which creates more anxiety and all that, and I'm going to talk about that later, another day. But 30 days, just try for 30 days to stop some of the stuff you're doing. Because what it can do is clear you a little bit. The psychiatrist that I've been reading some of her stuff on, that's what she does with phones. She tells people drop it for 30 days, and she said it's amazing the results she sees from people. Their heads are clear, their anxiety is reduced to almost zero, their depression is down to almost zero. That's pretty good stuff. And I'm not talking about if you have reasons to be anxious, those are things, but I'm seeing so much anxiety out here that isn't warranted. Our lives are pretty good in many ways. But we'll go another week on that. Recovery is a spiritual, emotional, and physical process. You can't do one without the other. It's not enough to just stop. You have to engage all these things. You need to become aware of what's happened to you. You need to be able to face the pain in your life. You need to be able to let your childhoods go or your whatever your trauma was. Some of you were adults when you had trauma. You need to be able to have support in stopping what you're doing. That requires trust. Trust is hard for us. We would rather, in many ways, destroy ourselves than trust others because we've been hurt so many times. But at the end of the day, we talked about this on Friday night. Really, we talk about addictive thinking, about how really addictive thinking is about lying to others. But you know who we really lie to the most is ourselves. That's who we really lie to the most. So the same thing here with this, trusting. We need to trust others, but at some level we need to forgive ourselves, let go some of the shame, and trust ourselves a little bit too. It's hard to do. It's much harder to trust ourselves than others. But trust is a walk over time. Family and friends need to accept the law of human gravity and not intervene. The question we always ask is, when did I stop enabling and when did I stop supporting and start enabling? Hard to know when. It's so hard. But if we do believe in the law of human gravity and prolonging the inevitable, we need to let people fall. You need to trust yourself on that. So we have to have 4 things to recover besides abstinence. We need to trust enough to at least not isolate. At least enough to go to a support group of people just like you. Maybe you're a little further down the road if they're coming. You need to be able to trust yourself enough to kind of figure out toxic versus non-toxic people in your life. And that one is an ongoing, we will always have trouble with that one. We need to have connection. We need to have connection with God. At least God. If we could just believe God's grace and mercy for you, that goes so far. He's not judging you. You're judging you. Support groups, of course. Healthy people. That's a hard one. You got to go slow with it. The next one is complete and total honesty. That's a tough one to really do that. To be really brutally honest about what we've done. More importantly, what we're doing. Every time we fib about our addictions, we have just created another day of addiction. But also we need awareness. We need to have complete and total honesty about people who have harmed us around us. Not to go out and harm them, but to understand and accept it. And then the last one, of course, is gratitude. We have to live with gratitude. If you don't have gratitude, I don't say you can recover. And I think gratitude, if you really get into it, you really start seeing God working in your life. It's pretty cool. So with gratitude, remember, write down 3 things that you're grateful for today. Write down something good that happened to you. Go out and exercise, pray, meditate, even if it's for 30 seconds, and then some form of random act of kindness for someone else. That's how we do gratitude. So this is a tough subject. We probably need to spend more time on it, how to trust people, how to be brutally honest, how to connect, and we will. But if you can't trust others, if you can't trust yourself, you will not recover. I don't know how to say it to you. So NorthStar Community, we meet on Fridays. We meet Fridays at 6:30. On Wednesdays, we meet at 6:30. And then normally on Sundays, we meet at 9:30 for Sunday school, and then at 11:15 for online service. But we're excited. Next week, we are going to be actually hosting the regular service, so we'll be on at 10:15 next week, and our Sunday school will not meet. So if you're here in town, come see us. Quit hiding. Quit shaming yourself. We are a safe group. We don't try to force anything on you. We know what you're going through. I don't think any of you are going to have stories that we haven't heard or don't already have in our lives. We're a safe place. It's a place you can start trusting just a little bit. So, at the end of every NorthStar community service, we end with the prayer of serenity, and I'd like to do that today. So let us pray. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that Jesus will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. Thank you for joining us, and our information's on our website. Would love to hear from you. Thanks again.